Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry. With me as always is...
Karen. No. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we're talking about the Howling.
Howling. I didn't know we were doing that. Cool.
I didn't know either. Released March 13th, 1981. Yeah. Starring Dee Wallace, Stone, and her husband at the time, Christopher Stone, who was also, we covered Cujo a while back.
Yes.
He played not her husband in that, but the man who she was having an affair with.
Yeah, another guy who things turn sour with, which, I don't know, it's interesting.
He played the part really well.
He did.
And sadly, I believe he passed away not terribly long after. I mean, no, because Cujo came after this. So, like, probably, and maybe in the late 80s or early 90s, I'm not sure. But that was, her husband for a while, and they made horror movies together.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Well, sad they couldn't round it out and make a trilogy.
Yeah.
Like an unofficial trilogy, but a trilogy nonetheless.
A trilogy of terror.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dee Wallace. Have we covered anything with Dee Wallace other than Cujo?
I feel like she's come up a lot. Because I think the first time she came up was in our first episode where you chose that girl in the video store who said, "What's the movie with E.T.'s mom? The werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom?"
Oh my God, that should have been your opening thing, like Howling, horror, straight away.
It's not from this movie.
I know, but it still would have been like a meta.
It would have been funny.
Thing.
Yeah.
The werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom.
Death to you, says Zach.
And that line always confused me too, because it's just like E.T. Like, was it sort of like obviously E.T.'s mom, as in like the mom from E.T. But I'm thinking like I picture E.T. and then I picture like what would E.T.'s mom look like, and probably just like E.T. in drag, as E.T. is in the movie. That's I'm just like, there's a werewolf movie and like E.T.'s mom is in it. Like, what does that mean? Anyway, that was overshare.
I love that that's where your mind went, because I understood exactly what she said, Zach.
Well, of course you did, because you know who E.T.'s mom is. That was the first movie I ever saw in theaters was E.T. So yeah, she's been with me since the beginning of it all. There you go. Interesting. There's no like allusion made to like E.T.'s sister. It's like, Casey Becker, E.T.'s sister.
Oh my God, that's true though. Like the little, I don't know how many degrees of separation. 2? I can't count. Yeah, something like that.
It's never far off. What is it, the Kevin Bacon, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Horror references are always incestuous anyway.
And I think especially with Kevin Bacon, because he's in so many horror movies that it's, just super easy. Maybe that should be a Cherry Picker After Dark one time. It's just like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Oh my God, that'd be fun. We should totally do that.
I know. It just seems like it would be very hard,
Well, that's the whole point, Zach.
I know. Okay. So The Howling.
Yeah.
This is obviously a werewolf movie, and we covered a werewolf movie recently with an American werewolf in London.
Can you do that through the rest of the pod every time we say werewolf? There is no H in it.
Well, you could do the same with like Wagon Wheel Watusi. But the H's are always silent. But you were mentioning American Werewolf like just before we started, and you're like, it's gonna come up. So I feel like you got some shit to say. So let's hear it.
Oh, we're leading with that? Oh shit. Okay.
Let's phrase it this way. Okay, so these, when you think of werewolf movies, I think like the two heavy-hitting champions that usually like what people remember of just like the classic werewolf movies, like other than like Wolfman and stuff like that, is The Howling and American Werewolf in London, and they both came out the same year. Also, I think Silver Bullet, was that 81 or was later?
I think that was a little bit later. I think
Okay.
Silver Bullet was more like maybe 86, 87.
Okay, no, that's fair.
I want to say. So,
Yeah.
something like that. But that one, I feel like when people make allusions to Silver Bullet, I feel like it's a much more niche allusion to make.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, oh, you're a horror fan, whereas I feel like you can be a horror fan and make references to American Werewolf in London or The Howling, but also they did experience a great deal of like mainstream success and even just discussion. They're always part of the discussion when people talk about it, and of course Rick Baker's no small reason for that.
Yeah. I also noticed Rob Bottin's name in the credits as well, and we know Rob Bottin from The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and that's probably like so. Okay, the question is like, which do you prefer, The Howling or An American Werewolf in London?
Yeah. Okay. So you want to answer that question? I guess I definitely have an answer.
Yeah.
Now, when asked, I am team American Werewolf in London, but doesn't mean I dislike this movie. You know, we go over this every time we discuss any rankings or favoritism toward one thing over another. But it doesn't mean I dislike this movie. But this is the thing: is I don't watch this nearly as often as I do American Werewolf in London. Number one, number two, I think. It's also partially colored my experience with the pursuit of this movie when it first got released on DVD over 20 years ago. I purchased the DVD the day it was released, and I brought it home and I watched it that night. And I don't even eat popcorn during horror movies, but I do remember I made popcorn. Like, I made an event out of it. I was like, this is going to be fun. I don't really have that many memories of this. I feel like I'm watching it for the first time. And because I think I'd only seen it maybe once before and just didn't return to it a lot. And I was like, I wonder why. Tried to watch it and it would not play. So I'm like, fuck, well, now my plans for the night are shot. So the next day I worked at a video store. I went back and I returned it. I exchanged it for another copy, brought it home that night, didn't make popcorn, just sat there just to test it to see if it worked. It did not work. So I'm like, fuck me. So I'll take this to another store at another location that is the same brand and see if I can exchange it. Maybe we just got like a flood of bad copies or something. Picked it up, took it home for the third time, tried to watch it, could not, took it even farther to exchange it for another copy and tried to watch it. So 4 times, 4 exchanges, it never worked. So finally I just got my money back and just said, you know what? I'm not meant to see this right now. One day I will. And then I think maybe 5 years later, I watched it and I was like, oh, it's okay. But I think there's a lot of discussion as to why. How about you? Do you lean in one direction or the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of this, because like I hear what you're saying of just like it's not one that you revisit, and that's normally for me because there's movies that are good, there's movies that are great that I don't revisit, and it's always like, why don't I? And it's because it's not rewatchable. And I think that I agree with you. Like every time I watch this, it's like I forget the movie, and then I watch it again, and it's. You know, I'm not necessarily disappointed because I think that there's a lot to love here, but it's also, you know, it's like, okay, I can see why. This is not one that has a lot of substance to it, whereas I feel like American Werewolf in London does have that in spades. There's a lot more going on in terms of character. There's a lot more going on in terms of satire. And I think just like overall, like the Howling is it just feels like a very self-contained story. American Werewolf is a little bit like broader in terms of just like the scope of the world that it is. The thing is like because we talked about this in the American Werewolf episode and I kind of said like werewolf movies like they always sound fun in theory but like most of them are not good. Or I mean, at least it's all opinion based as well. But I feel like there's not really like a great werewolf because like, and this is me, like I think that probably American Werewolf is the best that subgenre has to offer. But even then, it's like like that to me is not a perfect movie by any means. So this is like I love the idea of werewolves. I think there's just like something so interesting about them. But like the movies that we've gotten. Have not been that great.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I agree to a point. I think that I mean, the problem is like the one that gets a lot of reference made to it. I mean, it even has like an on-screen appearance in this movie and is mentioned a great deal, or at least alluded to, I think, in a resonant way in American Werewolf in London, is the original Wolfman. Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of that movie. Like, I love watching Lon Chaney Jr. Playing Larry Talbot, just being consumed. He starts off this like puffed up man, and I won't linger on it, but he starts up this like puffed up man who's a little predatory himself, but like in a kind of quote unquote playful, socially acceptable way. And then he ends up becoming, and he's also from wealth. He hasn't a care in the world. He's even living the carefree lifestyle in real time as we meet him, and then immediately everything shifts, and he becomes kind of us, someone who is presented with a predicament that he did not choose, but that he is subject to, and or subjected to, and that he immediately he has to think in terms of like his priorities in his life, his family, the woman he cares for, and their safety, and his own, I guess, danger, like his own overreaching power when he loses control. All of that shit I can totally get on board with, and I think it just looks sensational. So yeah, I can get on board with that.
Another one that's like I think deserves its flowers, but I watched it recently and I was just like, this is overly long. Is Ginger Snaps. From 2000, Canadian movie, and it's got our favorite Catherine Isabelle, because I love like sort of like the correlation to just sort of like becoming like maturing, like in her case like becoming a woman, and just like how it is like the werewolfism or lycanthropy,
I think is
lycanthropy. It's like anthropy. Of just like, you know, like correlating that to just like menstruating and becoming a woman, and just like having all these things, like she's just like hair is coming up, like she's having to shave her legs, but it's also kind of like, no, that's because she's turning into a werewolf. And there's a lot of fun that's had there, but it's like I watched that movie and I feel like, oh god, they could have like shaved 20 minutes off of this thing, you know, maybe especially towards the end.
It's another one I enjoy as well, but I've only seen it, I think I've only seen it once. I don't return to it often. I have fond memories of seeing it, but I'm due for a rewatch, and I never saw the sequels. I need to get into those. Yeah,
I don't know. I have one of them, and I've only watched it once, and I don't think that they're particularly were well received. But there's, I mean, as we know with American Werewolf, there is American Werewolf in Paris. That's sort of like the sequel to that. But there's, and we'll go over like the Howling movies of just like everything that's there, or how many there are in a bit. But this is a franchise, and we actually covered it in this last CPAD because we went through all the franchises. But one thing I did want to say, and kind of like off topic here, but you mentioned the DVD that didn't work. Have you heard this thing where apparently DVDs from, and maybe I already fucking said this on the podcast, I don't know if I did, I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind, but the DVDs from released by Warner Brothers in the mid 2000s are now being recalled because they're like leaking some sort of like acid or something, like there's something wrong with them.
I don't think you mentioned that on the pod. I don't even remember you hearing that from you. Oh my gosh.
What's crazy is that, okay, well, first, like, Howling is MGM, so I don't think it would have been part of that. But recently, because when we were doing the Cherry Picker After Dark, when we were comparing the original Final Girls to the remake ones, and we were doing Prom Night, and I watched that because I had the DVD, and I haven't seen it since I bought it originally way back when, and it wasn't working. It just would not play, and I'm like, what's wrong with this? And it wasn't like toxic, it wasn't like, you know, it didn't kill me, obviously, unless I'm dead right now and this is just
lying
hell.
You're lying about it.
And so I don't know if that was like a defect or something, because it worked fine before, and it's not like I overplayed it or anything, but I did have the movie Unforgiven, which, not horror, but like the Western movie, and which is Warner Brothers, and I've moved several times and always like pack up my movies. And when I moved one time, that was like leaking some sort of like crusty acidy thing, and it like yeah, like it destroyed a whole bunch of DVDs, but it was like that was the, I guess, patient zero.
Right.
Yeah.
The source.
So now I'm kind
Oh
of
my God.
I'm kind of and I'm thinking about like when did I get that? It might have been like mid 2000s. So I'm a little like skeptical of like DVDs now.
I'm like leering at my DVDs now because I don't have very many DVDs
Yeah,
left.
no,
but
you got you're about the blue. And
I'm
I've
about
like
cycling through. Yeah.
yeah, like I've upgraded a lot of, and usually when I get a 4K or a Blu-ray, I just take the DVD off the shelf and just toss it, or I don't toss it, but I like have a storage for it because I'm like, one day I'm gonna take these to a secondhand store and sell them for
Okay. So you open up the locker and you just find a bucket sizzling.
There's
Just
like
a
right
crate.
over here, for anyone who's watching, like behind here's like the closet, and there's like a curtain up there. Because it's a nice little backdrop rather than looking at the sliding closet, and in there is just like piles, like mounds of DVDs. So I imagine like I'd open it one day and they would just come tumbling out on me.
Oh, also just because to bring it back to like werewolf movies, and then I'm sure we'll get to the topic at hand. But there was one more. It's not horror, but I loved it growing up, and then I rewatched it in like early adulthood, and I thought, oh my God, this is actually really well done. It's the OG Teen Wolf movie with Michael J. Fox.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God, because it follows the thematics of all your usual werewolf movie, but it kind of extracts the horror and kind of just makes it a little bit more dare I say it, after school special, but like the best case scenario of like what that is about being yourself and accepting yourself and accepting the people who accepted you.
Is there like
before you were cool?
Is there a similar like puberty theme to it, like Ginger Snaps? Because I've never seen it. I know there's two of them. I know that the second one is not Michael J. Fox. It's
Jason Bateman.
Yes, Arrested Development, and then there's the television series, which I never seen. But then there was the Wolf Pack, which I think they were trying to say was a spin-off, and it had nothing to do with it actually.
I don't know. Sarah Michelle Gellar was in it, but I still haven't watched it.
And obviously we stan SMG, but that was not enough to get me to watch this Wolf Pack show.
There's too little time in the day these days.
Yeah.
But that one, no, the original one, I think that might have been in there. Like obviously, like he does. Like his first transformation happens in the bathroom in front of the mirror, and he's horrified by what he's seeing, and his father opens the door and all of a sudden he's very hairy but looks kind of adorable. He looks more like an elfin bear. And and he just says, an explanation is probably necessary right now, isn't it? He's like, an explanation, Jesus Christ, Dad, doing his little Michael J. Fox voice. And but it's really, I think it's got more of a, like I said, an after school special thing, just kind of like there were people who, a small, what's the word I'm looking for? Like fraction of people who accepted Michael J. Fox the way he was before he wolfed out. And then once he wolfed, it's just kind of like, oh, now you're cool. And he kind of loses himself a little bit and has to regain it. And I don't know, it worked. Because Michael J. Fox is a really, really good actor. So
so I completely forgot about this, but we have done another werewolf movie.
We did.
We did Wes Craven's Curse, which honestly, like, we talked mad shit about that movie, but here's the thing. I like think about it a lot, and I go back and I'll revisit it. I'm like, this is not a good movie, but it's fun. Like, I have a good time with it. And
there were good angles in it. I haven't watched it since our pod. I will watch it again at some point.
I'm just thinking like Jesse Eisenberg, who's like wolfed, got bitten, and then suddenly like went to school and had like all this sex appeal. And then became very like homophobic too at the same time.
Yes, 100%.
Because that's like a side effect of
I guess that's another thing.
Lycanthropy.
Yeah, and that's another thing that makes me wonder. Like, because this movie almost kind of poses a similar question about like we'll discuss it because we still have to I have to read a premise and everything like that. But it does pose a question as to like, when do you stop kind of like being yourself and start the wolf part starts taking over. That's all I'll say right now.
Well, okay, cool, because there's stuff to say about that. But let's do a little housekeeping here for sure. So hi, Didn't see you come in there.
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you.
Well, sometimes we have a conversation and we forget that, anyone else is here.
I remember
watching or
there.
listening. I'm sorry, I just get so absorbed into these deep conversations with you.
You almost
Edward.
forget we're recording.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. If you're new to the Cherry Picker, or if you've been listening to for a while and you enjoy what you hear and see, think about giving back a little, and you can support us by heading over to my Patreon account at patreon.com/ZachCherry, ZACKCHERRY, and you can subscribe at any tier. You'll get early access to all of our episodes, and if you're subscribed at the Freddy Krueger tier, you'll get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is the bonus episode that we do once a month. The last one that we already mentioned here was the franchises, where do we go from here, where we literally went through, what was it, like 30, 40 different horror franchises, and we're just like,
yeah, it was a bunch.
What's the next step? Like, do we kill it, or do we, sequel, requel, reboot?
What would we like to see come from this point on?
Yeah. Exactly. So there's that. There's also been like the horror Final Girl survivors, the Scream survivors. We talk about different cult movies. I think, did we kind of decide on this? We were talking about it, but like, should we just nail it down that this month is going to be, we're going to talk about burlesque. Cause we've been threatening for a while. So yeah, not horror, but it might be scary for some people, but
for me,
there's some shit to talk about with that. And I mean, and again, there was also the prospect of the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. So there's always like kind of fun, very interactive episodes that we do. So you can head over to Patreon and support at the Freddy Krueger tier to get that bonus content, hours and hours of podcasts of Eddie and I just bickering back and forth if you enjoy that. But I do want to shout out and thank my top tier Patreon supporters. So to the Michael Myers tier, thank you to Kyle Beard, Maxime Rivest, Ali Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Traj 125, Bruce the Genetic, Jackhammer Rando, Gary Blasick, Michael Boswell, and then the Ghostface tier, Eric Champney, Sam Levy, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, Garrison Nichols, Craig Lynn. Thank you so much, everyone. And also thank you to our podcast editor, Jason Voorhees Gallotello.
Yay! Jason. That's what he hears in his head when he wasn't a very good swimmer.
I wonder if, sorry, sidebar, because Linda Cardellini has now officially been announced as Pamela Voorhees in the Crystal Lake TV series or whatever. Like, I wonder if she'll have like a New England accent.
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. Oh my God, he should have been watched
and
every minute.
And a perm too.
I wonder if she's gonna cut her hair, or maybe it'll be a plot point, like a significant moment in the series where she cuts her hair and dyes it blonde. I don't know.
We'll see.
That'd be pretty cool.
We'll see. Howling, you got a premise for us?
Yes, I do.
Cool.
I'm a weird alien from New England, but I don't have to read it that way, since it doesn't have anything to do with this movie. All right. After a bizarre and near deadly encounter with a serial killer, television newswoman Karen White absconds to a remote mountain resort with her husband, where mysterious interactions with various residents amid unearthly cries in the night finally compel Karen to discover what nefarious source might be behind the howling.
What is absconds? Is that the word you use?
It means it's usually referred to more in criminals, like they absconded into the night, like they escaped. Yeah. It usually means but basically, like, it means you escaped, like, custody, essentially. Surveillance.
Did you find that synopsis somewhere, or did you write that yourself?
Absconds is mine. I found it on IMDb, and then I modified it as per usual.
You edified it. Yeah.
I edified it.
Yeah.
That's already a word that means something else as well. I edified it. I edified it. I truthified it.
You absconded it. Yeah.
I absconded.
Where can people watch The Howling?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Zach. Well, it's available in a Scream Factory Collector's Edition from 2013 with 2 commentaries and no less than 7 featurettes. There it is. Or
actually,
more
this is the
recently,
4K. Yeah.
Never mind. Then that's where I'm going. Or more recently, a 2022 4K release that Zach Cherry is holding and having a hard time focusing.
Yeah.
There you go.
I feel like the Vanna White.
There you go. A 2022 4K release with 11 special features, interviews, etc. and whatnot. Very, very high scores on Blu-ray.com, also got to say. But if you're interested in streaming it prior, if you haven't seen it before, it's available to rent individually via Prime, or you can get it for free, actually. I had to dig a little to find this out. But it's available for free via Canopy, with a K, which is a free streaming service that only requires a library card to access. So have at it, kids. Go for it. If I'd known about that, I wouldn't have needed you to send me the movie.
I don't have a library card.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
He said as
Do you go to? That's where you get your movie rentals, as at the library still.
Well, not really, because I mean they don't rent Blu-rays, they only rent DVDs. I did watch most of the Bond movies for that series of C-pads. I rented those because there was no way I was going to put down, $4 to rent those. I mean,
surely John Carlos has them and could have lent them to you.
He did, but I'm not gonna no, because then he would have wanted to watch them with me, and I would have disappointed him more than I disappointed you. And I told him actually subsequently, like, I am so glad, because originally before that pod we planned to have like a movie weekend where he would just kind of zip through the franchise for me.
Yeah. And
I'm so glad that it didn't happen, because he would have been really bummed out, and so would I. But he would have been bummed out at my reaction.
Yeah.
It would have been a real downer. So it's more fun to just get it all over with, take notes, sit there with you, and just trash most of them.
Fair.
And watch your
reaction.
Well,
speaking of like trashing, because there's The Howling. Like I said, this is a franchise. Like they decided to fucking make movie after movie, and I actually, as a matter of fact, I have most of them here. Because I don't think that we're ever going to talk about any of these sequels. I would make a strong case that we should cover Howling 2 at one point.
I like that one.
Yeah, I mean it's insane. But yeah, this is Howling 2 with Christopher Lee. And
I forgot he was in it. I forgot.
And Sybil Danning. And this is the only, like, in terms of like connective tissue, this is the only one that actually like is a continuation of this first movie. Everything else I have no fucking idea. But there's like I don't know how House on Haunted Hill got in here, but yeah, Howling 3. No idea. What is the marsupials?
Haven't seen that one. I don't know.
Howling 4, the original Nightmare.
I think I have seen that one.
Yeah, this is. I don't even remember most of these. Howling. This is a twofer. 5 and 6. I think it's The Rebirth, Howling 5, The Rebirth, and Howling 6, The Freaks. I actually like the Rebirth is probably one of the better ones. It's like you'd probably hate it actually, because I just knowing you, but it's like an Agatha Christie style thing where like these strangers like gather in this Romanian castle, and one of them is a werewolf, and it's like, of course, this mystery, but it has an incredible score that I like. I just fucking love the music in that one. I don't have the 7th one. I heard it's a piece of shit. I mean, and then there's this Howling Reborn, which came out around like Twilight era, which I've only watched most of these once, but this one was like pretty much just like, how do we tap into that market of just like this millennial, like sexy vampire werewolf movie shit. So it's like, and none of these movies really have a lot of connective tissue, and they're really bad. And most of them were straight to I think the third one was the last time it got released theatrically.
Okay.
as far as I know. But yeah, it's been a bit of a shit show. So anyway,
interestingly enough, actually, most of the sequels, if not all of them, are much more easy to access for streaming than than the original, because the rest of them are all pretty much available on Tubi and Plex, and like your if you don't mind watching with ads, like you can watch.
I mean, honestly, an ad might be a nice little like reprieve,
little break
in between. But I mean, if anyone's interested to like just go through the Howling franchise, I might actually look for the 7th movie if it's on Tubi or something, and just kind of watch that, see what it is. But yeah, there's all that. But now getting to the Howling, the original, which has never actually been remade, contrary to.
Yeah, okay, see, now we can get into it, because this is the thing. I think it's not like I have a million tiny things that I would do to fix, quote unquote, fix this movie.
Yeah.
I really think for my taste, I kept thinking about other movies while I was watching it. And I think a big part of that is because I don't think it's the perfect marriage of director and material. That said, I understand why they picked Joe Dante. Like, prior to this, he had done Piranha, which is I don't even know if you call it a satire, a parody of Jaws. And and then after this he did Gremlins, famously, and Gremlins 2. And I really, really loved what he did on those two movies, Gremlins and Gremlins 2. But with this one, I feel like the reason why it works so much better for me, particularly with Gremlins and Gremlins 2, even though they're both very different movies in their own rights, is that there's always like a sense of humor, a conscious sense of humor to both of those movies, so it can lean into kitsch without losing its edge. It's almost like the kitschy allows the edge to exist with more freedom, like, because it's a more pendulous thing. Whereas with this movie, I feel like the material takes itself very seriously. We're talking about a very serious scenario that Dee Wallace plays incredibly earnestly and believably, and I love her on screen in this movie. I don't think I've seen her in anything I haven't loved her in, but I love her work. And while I'm watching her, all I could think while I was watching her was, wow, do I prefer her in Cujo? Because she knows how to play the fucking stakes no matter how kind of ridiculous the scenario is. And that's exactly what she's doing here, but I don't feel like the movie or the world of the movie is as serious as it needs to be for her strife to feel non-exploitative. It kind of feels a little tongue-in-cheek, and I think it could be better than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it's not a bad performance. Like, I think it's just like it's what we've come to expect from Dee Wallace. Like, she's fucking killing it, but it feels very camp within a movie that doesn't feel camp. And I agree. Like, it's just like the material, it's just like it feels a little too serious. And there's moments in it where, like that could have been like, feel like they're played for laughs, like when Terry is going through the filing cabinet and then suddenly like the werewolf like hands her the folder, and it's like, but I mean, like, it's a terrifying scenario and it's just played like, oh my god, you're there, but it's just like, here's this werewolf who's just fucking with her, and it feels kind of silly, but it's not landing the way, like, it's just like this dissonance of just like, what are you trying to do right now, like make us laugh or terrify us, and you're not really doing either one of those things. I think
even be kitschy fun, and yet it's still like the gravity of it, the weight of it feels so epic and so personal at the same time.
I think that I wouldn't say that this isn't fun. I think that there's fun to be had. I think like like Dee Wallace's performance, also like Marsha.
Oh god.
Everything to do with her, even like some of like the other like guests at the colony or whatever, and especially like once we get to the finale and everything is like these like crazy like low cinematic angles of just like people like ominously like, this is what we are and blah blah blah, and these like Dee Wallace and the claws like encroaching on the car and all these things, like these great shots, but it feels like it's a very underwritten movie. It's not a long movie. It's probably like just
No.
like 90 minutes. It
Yeah.
feels longer than it is though, and that's
It does.
one of the reasons why like I don't like this as much as something like American Werewolf, and why I feel this is not as rewatchable, because it feels like this probably could have been a 75-minute long movie with the material that they had. And I don't think that like there's a lot of extended scenes of just people walking through these woods. We see these characters walking through these woods, and like, to the film's credit, like it's gorgeous, like the scenery, everything, just like this mist that's going around. Like it's a very soft it's almost like the Raising Cane filter, remember, where everything feels like Narnia.
Sure.
It's fuzzy and blurry. It's just like, where are we? It's just like very dreamlike, and the color palette that they use of just like these things that are just like seeping in to whether it's like in these cabins or in the forest. But it's like we're spending most of our time just sort of meandering through these places just to get to the next thing, and there's not really a lot of action that happens. Like it's very isolated between a lot of like stretches of just nothing happening, and we are jumping back and forth. There's like the people back home, and they're doing their research.
We're
on,
investigative journalists.
everything that's going on here. So, what I kind of take away from this movie that I appreciate is more on like a technical aspect, like other than Dee Wallace and her emphatic, almost Adrian King, Friday the 13th Part 2, I'm having a nightmare on the bed.
Right. Yeah.
Performance.
I thought about that too. That was another one of the movies I thought of while I was watching this movie.
I mean, that's just what a short blonde bob will do.
Yeah, right.
But like just like technically, like it's the first of all, like Pino Donaggio composing, which is like beautiful score. He also did Raising Cane and Carrie famously.
Yes.
The special effects of this movie, I mean, there's one thing that's questionable, but the special effects, like, of just like the monsters and the transformations are legendary. Like, I think that what we see in American Werewolf in London is pretty spectacular. I actually think that the effects are better here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think like the werewolf transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on like what you're going for. Like this is the thing. For me, American Werewolf in London transformations will always be like number one for me, just because I love that from day one with that movie. When I would watch it, and I'd watch a transformation, and every time since, I never really get technical things from it. I get organic things. I get but we talked about that in that pod, about the bones breaking and the flesh stretching and the pain, the agony of like transforming, literally experiencing a physical transformation in real time, and in the broad, not light of day, but in the broad light of a well lit pretty pedestrian room. But so all of that with this one, it is a little bit more fantastical. I feel like the wolf design overall is more fantastical as well. Like there's something about what was designed for American Werewolf in London that I think was a little bit more kind of the stuff of what I dare not even imagine in my nightmares, whereas in this one I feel like it's exactly what I would have imagined in my childhood nightmares. Like when I thought about, like, I love when they show like the storybook art and everything like that with Dick Miller's little cameo in this movie, because it made me think, that when I see the werewolves fully, like once they're fully transformed, I think that's the wolf that ate Little Red Riding Hood's grandma. That's the wolf that knocked on the door of the Three Little Pigs if I'm having a nightmare, And so I love that. There's something, again, that doesn't feel like as organic biologically, but feels maybe more organic and transcends my own childhood psyche. So I have a very visceral response to it. But and also, it's kind of fascinating watching the bubbling of the flesh and everything like that, and the contacts and everything. The only thing is, I'd argue also, I think the way John Landis and his team handled the shooting of the transformations in American Werewolf in London, I find a little bit more seamless than here. I feel like a little bit more of the hand of like, let's watch exactly how and it just feels a little bit more technical to me. But it's
I also
still
feel like
better
the scenarios
Yeah.
are completely different. Like in there, and like we have to think about like who is transforming in American Werewolf. Like this is someone who like he's not experienced this before. This is brand new to him.
Right,
He's
right.
also like our way into the movie.
Yes.
So
yeah.
we're kind of like, you know, I think that works there for like just sort of like the pain of like what he's going through, because it's just like we're
point
getting
of
that in the
empathy,
performance. Here, I mean, this is like the villain,
Yeah.
Eddie Quest,
Hey.
yeah, who, and I guess this is sort of like the specific like conceit of the Howling is like they can just transform whenever they want. It doesn't matter if there's a moon, it doesn't matter if it's
Yeah.
night or this time of the month or whatever. And it's the scenario is a little contrived because she's just standing there and just like, oh, I guess we're gonna have to like just watch this whole thing play out. And he's just like going
Yeah.
through this, and you know, realistically she probably would have like tried to run or something, and she's just sort of
Backed
like
out of the room, maybe.
she's
Yeah.
she's just sort of there. What we're not seeing is that like off screen, Dee Wallace is just sort of like lighting up a cigarette and just like looking at her watch, and like, oh, yeah, I've got time
wish.
for this. And it's not, we're not getting as visceral a response from it because we're supposed to be seeing it through her eyes rather than like feeling it. So I mean, I think that
Sure.
if we're talking about like empathy, yeah, American Werewolf in London exceeds with that, but on a technical standpoint, I would say that the what we're seeing here is pretty damn cool.
As far as the scare factor, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd still say it's better and more effective than like easily
Yeah.
99% of what exists
Yeah.
in other werewolf movies. It made me think actually about, I hadn't thought about this movie in ages, but that fucking Van Helsing movie with Hugh Jackman and Kate
Oh, never
Beckinsale
saw
and
it.
everything. Oh my God. Okay, let me just spoil something for you. It's not even a story thing, but it has to do with the transformation of that wolf. Bothered the shit out of me because it felt like it was a good idea on paper in maybe a first draft. Like, oh, that I haven't seen that before. Let's see if it works. Nobody thought to like see if it worked. They just put it into the movie. When he transforms, he full on shreds his skin. And it's all CGI, so there isn't anything visceral about it.
Yeah.
There's nothing, you don't get a gross factor. It's more like watching a video game. But he
Yeah.
literally uses his nails to like shred his skin off of his body and reveal the wolf underneath. And I thought, again, interesting idea.
But,
We didn't have
yeah.
more than one or two goes at this to see like, well, how can we make it like really effective? Like outside of just
Yeah.
like, oh, that's an interesting idea. It never got.
I
past
mean,
that.
Van Helsing, what is that, early 2000s, where
I think so,
Hollywood was
yeah.
just like
Ugh.
on the fucking CGI train
Oh,
fully,
yeah.
where it just like it wasn't. I mean, CGI at the time like was very impressive to everyone, but like, you know, it's like CGI doesn't age well. Like that technology is always going to look bad when you're
Yeah.
20 years in the future and looking back on it.
It didn't
and
work
it's,
opening weekend of the release
yeah,
of that movie
and-
either.
and
though.
a lot of times it just doesn't even look good then.
No,
And
it
like
did not.
thinking back to like Hearst, like the transformation there, that was all CGI, and it wasn't
Right.
originally supposed to, but just because of all the crap that movie
Sure.
had to go through, so that turned
Yeah.
out to be a thing. I just think it's funny in this movie how frequently these werewolves like go in and out of their werewolf form. Like,
Yeah.
you know, it's clearly not a painful thing for them. They're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. But it seems to take a long time, and it's funny because like within that stretch of time, like every time we come back and like we first see Eddie, well, I guess like when he kills Terry, werewolf, and then somehow in that short span of time, now I'm a human, and it's just like now I'm turning back into a werewolf again.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna turn back
Yes.
into a human for
Yeah.
the other guy that comes in at the end. So it's like, you know, what are you doing, man? Just pick one form and stick with it.
It is the werewolf transformation equivalent of watching coffee percolate.
Yeah.
Like you just hit the on button and you're just sitting there waiting for it to brew into coffee. And but I mean, As far as a point of empathy, like you bringing up like the fact that Karen is our point of empathy, like yeah, I think obviously like she's effective with that, but I think even where the filmmaking succeeds as far as like allowing her to be the character we empathize with, I think the first time I really felt it was when she was already at the colony, and she had sat down alone, I believe, or relatively alone. Like she didn't go with her husband or with the doctor, and she just kind of sat at the little campfire that they had. And this strange man was sitting there staring at her and just kind of like almost licking his teeth at her. And she just kind of looked at him. And immediately I just thought, oh my God, this poor woman cannot get a break. She can't escape a life of suspicion, of just like wondering not only who could possibly, you know, like that Eddie was supposed to die, but who else could be like the next Eddie, like lurking around a corner, like just making her afraid of humans as opposed to being afraid of just like one you know instance that she had with like one man that she's forever going to be traumatized for, or at least that's what's implied at that point, that she's working through that trauma. But I just life under a lens, being a celebrity, the number of people who go up to her and just like, I saw you on the TV.
Well, it was like that couple, because they're just like, you're our favorite after that Asian one. What's her name? Like they don't even know.
And they use the word Oriental too.
Oh, that's what it was.
Like, oh,
right, yeah.
What a bygone era. But
but that's when she's just like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, right. But I also love that, like, they just say, I saw you on the TV, and she'll just be like, thank you, because you have to be agreeable. You always have to. Yeah. Even if they're not complimenting you, you have to treat it like a compliment until it is explicitly, there's a line crossed. Otherwise, you're going to come off as, like, you know, a disagreeable star piece of shit, you know? Yeah. So, I don't know.
Joan Crawford would, you know, if this movie was made...
I love that you said that, because it also, in the next moment, I just kind of thought, because I was percolating myself, sitting there wondering, like, why isn't this like clicking into place for me? That works, that aspect, but like, why isn't the movie kind of like working on me? And I think it was because I kept feeling, at that point, I think we were a half hour in, and I kept feeling like we were seeing Dee Wallace just kind of immobilized by fear, you know, one scene after the other, which is understandable. But then I started thinking about Cujo, and I'm like, even when she's like deathly afraid, she's still pushing back against something. And I don't know how you make her act more like the character in Cujo in this movie. I don't think that's the answer. I just think it's why that movie's more palatable for me, because I love watching all of that vulnerability brimming underneath with, but under like a warrior stance of like, I'm going to protect my child. I don't care if I'm getting bit by a dog. Ow, it hurts. Get out of my way. And then my kid's going crazy. I'm going to, all right, I'll get your daddy. Jesus Christ. Like those dire straits feel much more accessible to me than a woman, reminding me very much of Joan Crawford in, I thought about Sudden Fear, this movie, where she's immobilized by fear for most of the movie, just kind of going, no. Well, and I'm like, oh, Joan, come on.
With this one, like comparing it to, what was her name in Cujo? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
And she played on Survivor. We completely forgot. But the difference.
But my memory.
Yeah. The difference here is like, this is the character that she plays here, Karen.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Like it just very like damsel in distress energy.
Very
like
much so.
She's not really a proactive. If we can call her a final girl. I mean, she escapes the situation.
She does.
But yeah, she's like, you know, she has to be rescued. She doesn't know for the bulk of the movie that like what this place is. Like she has her, you know, the typical final girl, like, what's going on? Like there's something not right. But I mean, it's not like she's trying to get out of there or really doing anything. It's more of just like marital issues and things like that. And it's also, it's vacillating to a point where it's just like there's moments where everything's fine, we're okay, and then like no, so she's not really trusting her instincts. And when we get to the scenario at the end where she sees the body, and he comes out and she throws the acid on and she runs out to the car, and it's you know, she may as well have been like you know, like falling over while she tried to get there, and then
breaking her leg,
stuff like that. So but when you think of Cujo, like she's in a scenario where she's constantly has like conflict being pushed up against her, whether it's like
Yeah.
her marriage or just the fact that she's stuck in this car and there's the dog and the heat. So we're constantly seeing her react to shit and making decisions based on that. That I feel like just like story wise makes that character so much more interesting and one that you actually want to root for and see succeed. Not that I don't root for Dee Wallace in this movie either, but it's just like I'm not as interested in it because it's just like I know what this is. I've seen this character before. This is just like a typical archetype of the damsel in distress who's just going to run around and can't really figure out what's happening, and everyone has to explain it at the end. They had to be like, you don't get it, do you? Like she runs in, like they bring her into the barn and she sees the doctor, and she runs up to him to like hug him because she's like, at least you're a good guy, and he's just like, no, that's not what this is. Like, it's Karen, like save yourself the embarrassment.
yes, just like, oh darling, you poor pitiful stupid girl, you don't understand what's going on at all, do you? That's why I mean all of that was encompassed by just Karen. No, but I agree with you in terms of that. Also,
sidebar real quick.
In Cujo was Donna. Sorry, just wanted to say.
That's what I was gonna say. Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I just looked it up too. Neither one of us wanted it to go unsaid, but so yeah. I love that you brought up like the damsel thing because that was literally my next note after like the whole Joan Crawford and sudden fear of it all and missing her in Cujo, because then the next thing that happened on screen while I was watching this movie is that she grabs a flashlight and investigates a strange noise outside, going like hello, and I'm just like, oh my god, see, this is the problem.
True, is that
you? See, that is the problem. And also, again, she doesn't have to be, like every waking moment on screen, final girl energy and everything like that. No. But I think it's kind of a bummer to me that Dee Wallace's performance kind of serves up the believability of her sacrifice at the end, the strength in it, the fact that she knows no one's ever going to believe her, but knows now that like she's been infected, so she has a golden opportunity to show people something that even if they see it they might not believe, which couldn't be more relevant than ever. But I love that she all at her core, like I don't have a problem believing that character played by Dee Wallace would make that decision and would be that selfless to sacrifice herself just so people could witness something they can't explain away, even if they want to try and push it into the back of their minds and just go tell themselves, oh, what they do on TV today, special effects and all that, somebody's going to believe somewhere, and then somebody else is going to get attacked, and then hopefully this will all come out. But it kind of makes me sad that like I don't feel the movie in and of itself, the script in and of itself, like presents a character where I'm like, yeah, I knew she wouldn't let this go. Like I think that's Dee Wallace infusing it with her own strength and her own undeniable conviction of character. So grateful for her, but again, the movie. I also thought like other directors who I think, because that's another thing is, you're right, there is some fun to be had here, but I'm wondering like. There's a number of directors, I think, who could have just like really, sunk their teeth into the campy fun of it all. But I was wondering, like, what about the weirdness? Because it's a weird franchise for sure, based off what I have seen and what I've heard. But it made me kind of wish this movie were a little bit even weirder. Like, that's another thing is I feel like I would have loved it to lead into the weirdness even more. And it made me think, like, who am I thirsty for, whose direction in other things could like present that. And the first person I thought about was Mary Lambert, who did Pet Sematary, because I'm like, that is a fucking weird movie. And I love the way she balanced the weirdness with like the stakes of the family and made it all feel completely accessible, but also feel like, what the fuck is going on right now? I don't know where this came from. I feel like you're doing Stephen King proud, and I feel like I can't stop watching. So I feel like she would have been a good choice. Another one I thought of was, of course, you already mentioned Carrie, and I thought De Palma, with Carrie alone, just balancing like the emotional weight of the stakes of like what those characters were going through, while still managing to have these weird, light, fun, frothy moments for us that we can live off of, just like Billy Nolan. Well, isn't he the lucky one?
De Palma would have been like, yeah, he would have been an excellent choice for that. I'm just trying to think what part of the movie would be like the De Palma moment, like just like the slow, the bucket, or I guess in Raising Cain it was the child dropping from the landing on the motel.
I wonder if it would have been Terry doing her little excursion, like, because that moment wasn't tense at all for me. What Terry, like, finally getting to the colony and, like, uncovering stuff, and the threat was always there, and even she escaped one and then ran away and was just kind of like, oh, thank God. And I was like, well, you're not out of there, something's gonna get you.
They did this thing where, and this is the problem, because we were with Terry for a very long time, and this is what I'm talking about, like characters just walking through the woods, because it starts with her kind of making that discovery of just like the drawing of the landscape, like the cove, and like, oh, this is the place from his drawing. Yeah. And then going from like one very Texas Chainsaw 2003 of we're just going from one location to the other. And she goes through all that, and I guess like the werewolf who attacks her is Marsha's brother, because he's missing his arm because she chopped it off. Yes. And then she goes to the office and she gets on the phone and she's like, you're not going to believe this. And then it cuts back to like, meanwhile, back at the villa, the marital strife of the White family, or actually his last name's not White, but, and it like completely breaks up anything where like there could have been tension built up with that Terry thing. I think that they could have cut a lot of her just wandering through the woods and just had it there, and then just jumped right to the Eddie werewolf coming out. But it did feel like that was broken up. We talked about this in the I Know What You Did Last Summer podcast as well. During the Helen chase scene, it's intercut with all these bits of Jennifer Love Hewitt, kind of like, I guess she's, I don't know what she's doing, like she's figured something out. It was something to do with like the David Egan character or whatever, but she like runs to like the town hall where the pageant was and nobody's there. So it's just like, we know that Helen, Sarah Michelle Gellar, is not there at that point, so why are we wasting time just watching Jennifer Love Hewitt being several steps behind when we're in the middle of this like tense, gripping chase scene with her? And it's a great chase scene, but I feel like it's devalued because we're cutting back and forth to things that aren't relevant and that are breaking up the tension. So it's like, scenes like that where we could have stuck with this character and had this be like a complete unbroken set piece. But in terms of like what would the De Palma moment be? And I guess possibly there, but I'm sure he would have found a way. I also wonder if because Wes Craven, he leaned into
I thought about him
some
too.
Camp as well. Like he would have been an interesting choice. And
what's the one? Oh, is it Deadly Friend? That movie is off the
the basketball kill.
Oh my God! Like if you're watching or listening and you have not seen Deadly Friend, the Wes Craven off the wall flick, it's not like the most satisfying cinematic experience you're gonna have. But if you just want to watch some wacky shit, oh my God, like that's another one that makes me wonder, like what? And I did think about him actually from the beginning with this movie. It's weird that this predated Nightmare on Elm Street, because I think from the open it had this weird sing-songy kind of music playing, in these chords in the opening, and then the slashing of the title.
Well, and a very Friday the 13th, like the glass breaking as well.
Right. So it kind of bridged the gap between like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street in a weird way.
I mean, I don't want to like denigrate Joe Dante's work as a director on this, but I would be curious to know, like, would he have done anything differently? Like, does he talk about this movie a lot?
He has. Like, I actually used to love listening to the Gremlins and Gremlins 2 commentaries that he was a part of. and he would talk about this a lot. He'd talk about Piranha a lot. Like he loves just to talk about like movies that he's worked on and everything. But I don't remember anything in particular. He just talked about like lessons he learned on this movie that he carried into that movie.
Yeah.
But so I mean, but he seems like a relatively just kind of like, you know, I mean,
the thing
just a
is,
shrug and a wave,
yeah.
hand wave kind of guy.
The thing is, so The Howling is based on a book. And I don't know if I've never read the book. I don't really know much about it. So I'm just wondering if maybe it's just like it was just, you know, trying to be more faithful to the source material. Maybe it was very serious in a way.
Sure. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or maybe just even more, I don't know, kind of like saturated with intrigue in a way, because that's one thing that it feels like it is a little bit missing for me. It's just like the intrigue of the piece. I have fun with it, and I feel what I need to feel kind of when I need to feel, but I also feel like this could be punchier. That said, I don't want to like just trash Joe Dante either. I think the strongest moments for me from a filmmaking standpoint, I think, are really toward the beginning though. Like I love the way Karen's introduced, just the fact that like we follow her down this like dark alley, I can't even tell, like this corridor, this outdoor corridor, and this immediately her first it just kind of told me everything I needed to about her character and what she's going to have to contend with for the rest of the movie. And you know me, I love the microcosms where the man standing there kind of puts his leg up blocking her path, and we don't even see her face, we see his, so we're kind of like right behind her on her path, and she asks him to move his leg and he's not doing it. I forget why, but he's doing it. It's like this male bullshit from like the early 80s that I think was deemed socially acceptable enough that like at least certainly men could kind of go like, he didn't mean anything, he wasn't, you know, threatening you, he just was, that's just the way he is, that he could just shrug off, that I think most women would have been like, fuck you. And I love the fact that like she's like, move, you know, like your leg, and when he finally does and even acts like, I didn't mean anything, whatever, hey, aren't you famous? She's like, yeah, buzz off. I love that. I'm just kind of like, but right off the bat, this bullshit that she is going to have to contend with, and it spilled out. I'm like, okay, that's a good way to introduce this character, because it sets the stage for everything that she's going to have to bump up against, even within her own marriage. Her husband like turns from being like her safety and this, you know, patient, compassionate being that when she can't make love because she's still triggered by what happened to her, he's understanding, and he doesn't, you know, want to push anything on her. It's just like, okay, whenever you're ready is what we're given. And then it seems, okay, yeah, go ahead, say something.
You're just trailing there.
No, I'm going to say something, but it sounds like you were going to say something. So
no, I'm curious if like, because it feels like maybe the movie was supposed to be more about this marriage. Because it does get to a point where it does feel like an afterthought, and especially in like scenes where we're cutting away from the werewolf stuff and we're going back to them and they're having their fight and he slaps her, the whole like the bitch and heat comment and all that, and so it's like it feels like there was more about like sort of like the dissolution of their union, and there was like it was going to play a larger role into things, because he sort of just like disappears from the movie. Like he shows up when he's necessary, but it's almost like they're focusing more on the colony as a way of like, okay, well, let's just keep it more werewolf. But they're like you say, it's not intriguing. They're not doing it in a way where there's mystery or discovery. Like I feel like the drawing itself of just like Terry connecting the two is not really like a thing where it's just like, oh my God, like, because it's when we first see the drawing, she's like, I wonder if this is a place. And it's like, and then we go to the colony. It's like, obviously it's this place. So it's like, rather than the audience kind of like figuring it out at that point, we're more so watching these characters catch up. And that's where it's like we know something is afoot here, or, you know, whatever the case is. Like these people are not normal. There's something going on in this colony, and we're not really seeing it in an investigative way, because it's not like she's not really doing anything. She's just going around and she's more focused on her husband than anything else, and being like, I don't really like these people. Like I don't fit in here. So it's not like she's like something's going on here that I need to check out. And that's kind of like why I appreciate the Terry character, because she's sort of like, her arriving just like infuses a little bit of excitement into it, because it's like she's almost like the Gale Weathers, like, coming in there just like, I'm gonna investigate stuff and I'm gonna do this. But it's like by that point it feels like too little too late, and it's again just like really kind of stretched or like padded into this runtime that's not really that long but makes it feel very long.
Right, and even Terry, it wasn't her introduction, I believe, but it was the first moment that made me kind of take notice of her in like a significant way, because she did something I actually didn't like, and I still don't like it because you know how I feel. But well, we'll get to it. So she's when they're investigating the room, she and is it Freddie, the other guy, the one with the long nose and the pretty lips?
Her boyfriend?
Yeah, her boyfriend with the comb over.
I
think it's Freddie. I can't remember.
I thought it was Chris.
Oh, was it Chris? Okay. See, I don't remember them ever saying
Freddie, Eddie, Chris.
Chris. Okay.
Chris, yeah.
When she's with Chris, there's a Freddie in there somewhere. I just don't know who it is. So when she's with Chris and they're investigating and everything, and she goes over to this open window, which is obviously like, I guess, adjacent to this backyard or whatever, and all of a sudden this Cujo-like dog, occupies the space and starts barking at her and everything like that. And again, setting up this kind of like canine aggression that, this woman has to contend with. And her immediate reaction is just to kind of like take something. I hope it was paper. I don't know. I don't remember what it was, but she just kind of throws it at him like, hey, get out of here. And then it just kind of goes, arr, 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 like runs away. and I didn't like that because I don't like seeing animals, because that dog doesn't know you're in a movie and that you didn't mean to hit it. But I'm hoping it was paper and it didn't hurt the dog. And the dog was just kind of like, I just want a treat. And then it got a treat. And then it was like, okay, I don't remember what just happened. La, 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 la. But what I like about it cinematically is that, again, like here we've got a woman contending with this aggression, but it's also adjacent to, it's not men necessarily. They're in a man's space, but what they're contending with is this, this wolf-like kind of territoriality, which is also what she's going to have to contend with when she moves into that space. Yeah. So
I appreciated that. Do you ever watch movies about men in men's spaces or even in women's spaces? Like what's just curious.
Men in men's spaces
or women's spaces, just men in general. Movies where the men are not the antagonist.
Oh God, I don't think I could be a horror fan if I did. Probably. I mean, I think that's why I turned to like superhero movies. No, I mean like superhero movies. I'm all about like Superman. Yeah. He's in
is he a man? Is it like, if you're from
he's an idealized
Krypton,
man. That's why I love him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works with like the whole like Superman lore and all that.
Well, I mean, just a tiny tangent. The whole thing with the argument with his character is that like, yes, he is of like a Kryptonian descent, but the whole Kryptonian thing is that usually when the Kryptonians finally make their way to Earth, with the exception of Supergirl, they tend to be assholes, who just want to kind of like dominate. And the thing that we have on our side as humanity is the fact that like he was raised by us and nurtured by us and taught by kind of like how to access the best in him by us, by like Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent. So anyway, there you go. That's a little
cool.
little my dissertation on Superman and his significance to humanity. But with this one, I also think I don't know, because that's another thing. I'm sorry to make it also binary, but I feel like the movie put it all this way intentionally, and I think it's to Joe Dante's credit and I didn't get the screenwriter. Do you know the screenwriter's name? Who wrote it? Okay, well, you look that up. Yeah. I'll continue on.
Gary Brandner?
Okay, Gary.
Or wait, no, Gary. That's the novel. John.
Well, thank you anyway.
John Sayles, screenplay by
John
Sayles and Terrence H. Winkless.
Okay, so John and Terrence. Yeah. Thank you. John and Terry. Thanks, guys. Because another thing that kind of like sets the stage for that with me is the fact that like here, after that moment where we first meet Dee Wallace's character, Karen's like moving into this very dangerous situation where she's essentially the bait, and she's supposed to be backed up by predominantly this team of men and their technology, which is failing them. And from the get-go, they can't hear what she's saying, and one man asks another man like, what's going on, and the answer that come up with is that like it's those neon lights, all the neon intercepts the signal, it's just what the interference. And all I could think was, nobody thought of that beforehand? You're having her roam the city streets around neon lights, and you're not closer to her. You didn't think about getting a stronger signal or getting people in multiple locations or something like that. I don't know, I just kind of thought like immediately like the men taking over the situation is not helping this woman. So as much as she is kind of like a damsel in distress throughout most of the course of this movie, men certainly aren't saving her, even if she's turning to them, like the way she embraces the doctor in that moment, or the way she kind of leans on her husband and then he falls. Okay, because that's something I wanted to talk about too. But you have a rebut for that? You can go.
Well, it's not even a rebut. I just don't see this. Like, there's definitely movies where I feel like there is like a binary theme or whatever. I don't really see that here, because it's just like there's characters that are presented in these like power positions. Like Marsha is one of them, who's like arguably like the most like, you know, has the most power or agency over this like colony, or just like, you know, having her own free will and stuff. You know, the people who are in these power positions, or even in these like positions of like influence, like there are women who are manipulating Karen, like the one who made the Oriental comment, who kind of like becomes her friend at the colony there,
Donna.
So there's just like, it doesn't feel like, at the end of the day, I'm not looking at this as just like this dissertation on like like a woman in like a man's world. I think there's definitely like aspects of that when she's in the workplace, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
Who knows? Maybe she's pregnant, said her boss.
Yeah.
After Jesus.
But I don't think that that's like a through line, if that makes sense. I think that's more just like, oh, let's write this because this is like, these are things that are relevant. But like for most of the movie, I think it's like, again, I'm going to go back to this idea that like it was supposed to be a story about this marriage, and it just sort of like, by the very nature of whatever the screenplay or the screenwriters like turned the source material into, it just became this other thing. So I mean, maybe in the book, if anyone actually knows who's read it, has more of an opinion on it. I just feel like the movie itself doesn't feel that deep to me.
Well, I mean, you know me.
Yeah.
I love headcanon. And also, if something is planted, like, I'm not going to assume, well, that's just a mistake. They didn't know they put it there. Like, especially towards the beginning of the movie, when I think most filmmakers tend to kind of like really be exacting, because the introduction of something, I mean, so even when a lot of directors are shooting, they tend to go with like a later scene that doesn't depend quite so much on establishing chemistry, just so the actors can get a little bit better acquainted with each other, so that by the time they get to the introductory scenes, a lot, and it's not always, I know that, you know, sometimes the introductory scene is the first thing actors will shoot, but not often. Like, most of the time they will want that chemistry to already be kind of defined and kind of like deciphered. And because so many directors don't believe in long rehearsal periods, they don't really arrive at that first, you know, by the first day of shooting. They kind of get over there the course of like the first couple weeks. So then by the third week, it's like, okay, everybody knows each other, everybody feels safe with each other, we hope, and that knows like where their limits are, and then it's much more easy to just kind of like, you know, work within this space. But that said, I mean, what I'm getting, I don't feel like I'm also just like pulling it out of thin air, because I mean, I mentioned the comment that her boss, after he gave her that horrible anxiety-inducing buildup before she was going to return in front of the cameras, where he's just like, everybody's going to be watching you. And I was just like, what an insensitive piece of shit. Like, this is not what you do to de-escalate her tension on camera. What you're going to do is just all I could think is like what a sensitive person would do would just be kind of like, okay, so you know what, just think it's just another day at the office, don't sweat it, the cameras, we're all there behind you, you know, and if you need, you know, a moment or something like that, just give us a signal, you know, like, I mean, there are things that person could have done, but I think it was intentional to make him this aggressive, male force, because also the reason why I feel like it figures in is because after she flips out and has to be kind of carried off. He says, who knows, maybe she's pregnant, like some horrible woman. He says, get me that. He's also racist because he calls the quote unquote Oriental anchor that they want to substitute her, he calls her Fujimoto or whatever her name is. And I'm like, oh my God. And then he sees the man who's taken over, who was rehearsing, I think, in the camera, and everything. And he just points to him and says, now there's a pro. And I'm like, of course, one man thinking see, that man didn't let his sexual, his sexually, boundary crossing, sting operation that went haywire get in the way of his job, because he doesn't have shit. He's a man standing with a script in hand in the bathroom. Anyway, but also
I hear that, and that's why I say anything connected to those scenes, and I feel like that's just more intuitive writing of just what would this workplace scenario be like, but going back to kind of the character and just how we've already kind of classified her as this damsel in distress. Throughout the movie, it didn't feel like there was really an arc for her to kind of realize what all that was.
I think if there was, I feel like what she came to at the end is and this is where the thing that I mentioned earlier about your identity and everything like that, because there's always a question of identity and are you just releasing the primal within you, and this movie begins with that, it's glaring in the discussion on the TV show before anything really even happens, where the doctor's just sitting there kind of jerking himself off, talking about the man in the people inside versus the primal versus, what did he say? I think it was something, the primal versus sophistication and these themes of repression and everything like that, and a werewolf is usually an answer to a lack of restraint, unbridled, primality kind of seeping through. And
so how do you think that would, because we talked about this later, how does that relate to the characters, the werewolves, and what is the, when they become a werewolf, what is the difference here? Because it's sort of it's almost like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer canon, where it's the demon kills the human. Yes. And there is no soul anymore, and it just sort of takes up shop in the vessel. So
according
you're not
to Buffy.
Yeah, so it's just what you're seeing is not the, at least in here, that's what it felt like. It's just this is not the person that existed. This is the werewolf demon that's taken over. Where a lot of werewolf lore that we've seen in the past is just this is the more uninhibited version of yourself once you've kind of become that beast.
I thought about Buffy in two instances with this movie, and the one that you're alluding to right now I'll address is just, yes, the demon, and Buffy does say that, and I do believe to an extent that, I know she believes it, and she's experienced it, and I know that she's been on the other edge, so it's it's not that's not what it is. It is what it is, but it's more, because I remember also Buffy saying after Willow experienced herself, her vamp self.
Yeah.
And she's like, and I think I was kind of gay. And Buffy's like, well, vampire identity doesn't have something to the extent of vampire identity doesn't have anything to do with who you were when you were alive. Right, Angel? Angel goes, oh, well, actually.
Never mind, yeah.
Never mind, yeah.
So, I mean, the controversy with Buffy and the soul canon is what it's called, is it doesn't really make any sense, because you can look at Angel and Spike, and I'm sorry if we're losing anyone who's never watched Buffy, but when Angel is a vampire, when he's evil, when without his soul, he's not Angel, he's Angelus, and it's a complete it's presented as a completely different character, with his own mind of how to do whatever. And then with Spike, it's he's always just been the same person. It's just he gets his soul later on in the series, and it's contradictory in that sense. So there's a lot of things that aren't adding up, because while this is considered two people splintered off, here's one character who's just the same person with or without a soul.
Well, and also about what do you do with that? What, I guess it also depends, and this is something they never really go into or haven't gone into yet, because there's a reboot coming.
There's a reboot, yeah.
But what demon does every demon have the same agenda, and does it always manifest in the exact same way? Or do some demons think, yeah, now I'm going to get in the driver's seat, I'm going to access all these repressed, impulses that you have, and I'm just going to let you just go for it, baby. Let's go for it. And is another demon going to get housed and just be kind of like, it's all about survival. I just want to stay alive or unalive. Yeah. I don't want to get dusted, so let's just look out for number one.
Or is there, maybe there's a case to be made for Angel that's sort of like a convenient excuse to like not take responsibility for
there's that too.
It's like that wasn't me. But
yeah, there's that too.
With the Howling, it definitely feels like, just like with sort of like the monologuing at the end, that this is it's like this beast that's taken over, and it's no longer the person that it was to begin.
Well, I would believe that if we only had that scene where we've already seen Bill, Karen's husband, consummate whatever that is, that passion that he had.
Which was the one moment that I was talking about, of like just the horrible effects where it looks like animated outlines of bodies. It's like a cartoon.
Right, yeah, the little animated he's howling by the campfire fire, and everything like that. No, John Landis never would have, but but I also wouldn't want John Landis to direct this movie. Anyway, excuse me. But yeah, so we've already seen that happen, and then he comes back and he's got scratch marks on his back, and Karen sees them and immediately questions him about them, as any partner would, I imagine, hopefully, at least. And he denies it, and she's just like, he says something about like,
he got them during the attack, and she's like, well, they weren't there yesterday.
They weren't there the other night and I've seen your back, motherfucker. She doesn't say that, but that's the sentiment. And he just tells her, you're just being paranoid. And immediately, I think she responds actually pretty well, considering the fact that, you're being lied to, and you know the truth. You just want him to tell you the fucking truth, and then all of a sudden he hauls off and smacks her, and then immediately seems to kind of like want to just ease everything, and she does exactly what I think she should have done, which is just like, I don't want to hear it. And she's like, no, you don't understand what it's like. She's like, I don't want to know what it's like, and just gets the fuck out of Dodge. Good for her. So that made me think like, oh God, is he like being eclipsed by the werewolf, or by the primal instincts of this, other identity that takes over, that made him cheat on her, which I don't believe necessarily that would be his first, second, or third option had they just remained themselves, as opposed to like this maybe what's the word, like glamour that he might have been under, but who knows what, because these werewolves seem very, very horny. And that was Marsha's like first, that was the thing about Marsha, was also she was that, because that's another thing that makes me think it is in a weird way, even if it's not always mindfully done, there's this weird like binary track that the movie's following, because one access to power that women have always been granted in cinema is sexual power, and that's really Marsha's first kind of like, the way we're introduced to her is that she's just kind of this lascivious, sex-driven, like, unbridled, she-wolf animal thing, before we even know that she's a wolf. Like, there's something dangerous about her, something that isn't polite and patient and maternal or anything about her. She just wants to get it done, and done dirty. And it's part of why I like her. I just wish she didn't go after other women's men. But the thing that made me think like, oh, now there's a question mark about like, being eclipsed by this other identity or form or anything like that, is the end, is just the decision that Karen makes, because she does the most selfless thing in the world that she could as a werewolf, which is to just show the world, this is the secret. You're going to do with the truth what you do with it, but I want to warn you, and once I'm out as a wolf, I don't think I'll be in control anymore, so I'm making a plan to have myself shot with a silver bullet, and that'll be the end of me, but at least I'll die knowing that I saved some lives, possibly. At least there's a chance. And it just made me think, okay, but so, because he didn't smack her when he was a wolf, her husband, he, was a person. Maybe he was a little more far gone, but I mean, are we led to believe that she got scratched in the car while she was being attacked? With what's his name?
Well,
Chris.
It was while they were escaping, and it was Bill, because they shot him, and then she's like, Bill.
Bill, because he's in the back seat, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like, yeah, I think that I agree with you actually. For once, um, I would say that the lycanthropy canon of the Howling, at least this movie, because who knows with the sequels, is that once you're infected, it slowly starts to take over, and there's signs and there's like impulses and things like that, and I think we see that with Bill, where he's a vegetarian and then he starts to like indulge in like
funny.
eating meat and stuff, because like
Yeah.
we see at the beginning before he's scratched, like he doesn't want to, like he's like, no, I'm a vegetarian or whatever, and there's the whole thing with like this is where it's confusing though, because he went hunting and he had the rabbit, and I mean like everyone, like people's vegetarianism is different, it might be for health reasons, or it might be-
Lacto
yeah.
ovo and all that stuff.
Yeah, but there's like this argument that like that the brother of Marcia is saying to him, because he's got the rabbit, but he goes there for her to like prepare it, and I guess he's like preparing it for like Karen or someone else. I don't. That wasn't clear.
That's
to
what
me.
I thought. Yeah.
It wasn't clear to me, but he rejects Marcia, and he's like, I gotta get back to my wife. So I feel like that character was very consistent up until the attack, and then that's where things started to go south. And I mean, you could look at an argument of just sort of him being in the car and wanting to scratch her, bite her, whatever, to turn her to like have her join him, because it's like the werewolves, like they were just ready to kill her, right? Because this was also unclear to me. It seemed like the doctor wanted to, because he's like, she's a public figure, we can't just do away with her, we have to. I think he wanted to turn her, but they were all like, no, like let's just kill her and her friend or whatever, which doesn't make any sense. Like, don't you want to like remain covert?
Well, I felt like it was Marcia's power play against her. I think it was her territoriality and her way of marking her own territory with Bill is mine now, and I don't want any vestige of humanity left in him, so I need to get rid of this bitch because she's fucking Snow White and I'm the evil queen.
And I love that. I wish that was conveyed in a way, because it just feels like that was lost in the story.
It was much more more subtextual than pushed to the forefront, and I think again it's there, but I would have liked it more pronounced.
It's not even like it's not even that it's like it could remain subtextual, but it just like it wasn't present. It wasn't even like these characters just disappeared. We were spending so much time just wandering through the fucking woods with Terry and then with Dee, and like I agree with all of that. I think that makes sense. Like I'm glad that we're discussing this and you're telling me your ideas, because I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying. It's just that I think that there's so much missing from this movie, and I don't know what the I probably should have done my research, but that's not what we do here. We don't research. We just watch and we talk about our feelings.
We research as we go. Yeah,
we talk about our feelings and stuff.
Yes, and
we bicker.
We bicker.
We do.
But no, because that was now while we're talking about Marcia, because that's another thing like that I thought of while I was watching this movie. I saw her and I just immediately thought about Buffy, not Buffy the character, but the show. Yeah. And I thought about the she-wolf that meets Oz. Sorry, spoilers for season 4. Yeah.
Veruca.
Veruca.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So Veruca. Can't stand that character, but anyway, we watch that pod where we discuss like all the 4. Buffy seasons. Watch the Buffy seasons and then watch our pods, our CPADs, where we discuss them season by season. We cover the whole series. But when we get to that episode, there's a little spoiler for you folks. Just in terms of how I feel about the character, they took a character who I thought could have been making some really valid points, and arguably might have been, even as it stands, in Buffy, about like denying your nature, and about kind of like blindly obeying people who are not of your ilk and following their rules as opposed to following your own, but then also slowly deteriorating from a voice of freedom to like this devil on the shoulder of Oz going, come on, just let it go, just get in touch with who you are. And I feel like that's largely, that was dead on.
Yeah.
But I feel like this was largely what Marsha was also kind of comprised of, which is just like, she is a she-wolf, so therefore she is also primal, but because she is primal, she is in heat at all times. And it's interesting. It's almost like a cultural benchmark for like how we perceive, like, to use your terminology, women who behave badly and who usurp power, and what they have to do once they've usurped it, and do they think ahead? Like, I feel like her survival at the end was much more happenstance and kind of like maybe like reliant on her cunning than any kind of strategy. But what it set up that never got paid off, as far as I know, in this franchise, and I'm really sad about that, is that, well, then in order for Karen, for her story to really kind of sing, is she does have to make this ultimate sacrifice and get shot. What I'd love is maybe a twist for a sequel where Karen was not shot by a silver bullet because Chris just didn't have the heart to full on off her. So she just kind of shuts down the way Eddie did for a while. But then she rejuvenates, escapes her little hatch, her little funereal hatch or whatever, or claws her way out of the grave even, who knows.
Yeah.
And then she is the force of benevolence who is fighting her own nature. So she's not pure good, but she's like the anti-hero. Yeah. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have Marsha, who maybe she's learned something. Maybe she's learned, I need to strategize. I can't work quite so instinctively now, so I have to be smarter. So both of them have to kind of up their game and overcome these animalistic impulses and get in touch with their humanity to be more pragmatic, to fight each other. That would have been amazing. Well, and we don't get that movie.
I won't spoil the sequel, but it's interesting because like that. This is stuff that is addressed at the beginning. It just feels like it's a completely different world that the sequel exists in, and it's like it's connected through continuity, but then it's just like is this even the same fucking universe? So it's like it's the title of the movie. It's like Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf is one title, and that would be because it follows Dee Wallace's brother, and it's sort of like that's a line that is said to him. It's just like, your sister is a werewolf, which is not even said on screen. It's just like they're just like, what did he say? He said, my sister is a werewolf. And there's another title of it called Sturba, Werewolf Bitch, which is, I mean, both titles are fucking amazing. And Sturba refers to the Sybil, what's her name? Sybil Danning character. Who's sort of like this werewolf queen. Who, I mean, in for all intents and purposes, I guess is like the ultimate form of like what a Marsha would be, of just like, but to the nth degree of this like mythical werewolf creature. So I mean, Marsha might just be one of the underlings. I don't know how it connects to the colony. When I watch that movie, I don't really pay attention to the story and the continuity, because it's more about like how ridiculous everything is that is happening. I know that I've heard complaints before, because it's like she's locked in the barn as it's set ablaze, and like everyone in there is dying, but you know, there were werewolves that weren't in the barn, as we see, as they're like howling as they're driving off. So I mean, it's possible that like somehow maybe one of them got the werewolves out before they burnt up.
The ones that survived,
or maybe there was an escape hatch, or maybe, you know, they're like, is this the only door to the barn? And Wallace is just like, I think so. So you know, they could have been wrong too. I mean, it didn't seem like Karen or Chris really had a handle on things at the end there, because again, they're like, she's still being fooled by everything. Like they're driving and they see the sheriff or whoever, and she's like, stop the car. Here's a vestige of safety. And it's just like, no, you're still an idiot.
That's why I would have loved to have seen like those characters go like, I need to be smarter this time. Both of them, you know, and I would have been rooting for both of them to succeed and see like, okay, so when are you going to realize you have more in common than you have, opposing against each other, and you should just turn against, the people who are the real oppressors and rule the world together.
Yeah. You did mention like earlier, because we talked about like the damsel in distress aspect of it, and you're just like, I don't want her to be this like, fully like in control. Like this is a trope that I'm really starting to get tired of, which is like the boss girl thing. It's like it's almost like bordering on like the Mary Sue of it all. Because it's just like it's lazy, and you think of characters like Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton in the Terminator movies, and like, she's fucking badass, and she goes out there and she fucks shit up, but she's also a flawed character, and she fucks up. There's like she's not always right. She doesn't always get it right. She's has her pitfalls as well, and it's like those are the kind of characters that, like, that's what I consider Sidney Prescott, because it's just like we see this character grow, and she's not always like, she doesn't just go in there and it's just like bam 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 getting it done, even though she kind of has like this bravado about her at the end, like, I always survive or whatever, but she's like, there's always a question, because like I think that it's important for that character and the audience to always feel afraid for them. Like, I don't want to like be watching a character and think like, they got this sort of thing. Like, there should always be a threat, but I also don't want to see them as like this punk ass bitch who has no idea what's going on. And I mean, granted, like, we get like this camp performance out of Dee Wallace, but I think at the end of the day, like, I'm glad that we covered this movie, because I've even watching it, and every time I watched it, is sort of like the question, like, why don't I revisit this one very much? Why don't you revisit this one very much? And I think that we answered the question, and it's just that the pieces just aren't fully put together there. I think that there's a lot missing. There's a lot more, like, the heart of this story was sort of like these characters, the husband and wife, and this outlier of Marcia kind of coming in there, and they didn't capitalize on that like the way that they should have, and they didn't present this character as someone who could have been more, I don't need her to go toe to toe with Marcia, or like, be in the situation where it's just like, we're gonna throw down and I'm gonna like, it's a fight to the death. But I would have appreciated a little bit more knowing, just like awareness of each other throughout the movie, because that just, it wasn't a priority. It didn't even feel like it was on the back burner, and like that's the kind of subtext I wanted, of just like clearly, like, she's talked about her and she said like that bitch and heat, which caused the big slap. But I think that there could have been some really scintillating tension there, because like obviously, like, she kept talking about her, and what I didn't realize, like, I was looking at the IMDb, and the character is listed, like, the full name is Marcia Quist. So does that mean that she's the brother of Eddie, or daughter or sister? Like, who knows what the aging of
wife
Werewolf.
Maybe they have a fucked up union.
That could be another thing. It's just like like, it's almost like my husband was like, went after you, so I'm gonna go after your husband. So it's just like, it's, now that you're mentioning that, it's just like there's all these things that are just like, were there, the pieces were there, they just didn't put them together. So I would have liked a lot more in terms of that. And I think that having that tension and having the conflict and those characters at least be in each other's stratosphere would have elevated this to a level where I think it probably could have leaned more into the camp as well.
Have them, in each other's eye line, as it were, as Faye Dunaway would put it.
You're in my eye line. You need to. This is Marcia. She just like, Karen, you're in my eye line. You simply must leave the colony.
That would have been hilarious. But it's also because thematically, in terms of like, it's one of the few allusions that's made to kind of like this, not even this primal versus sophistication or anything like that argument that Dr. Wagner makes, but it does allude to humanity in a way, and it's a line from Donna, actually. And again, it's kind of like a cast-off line. Like, it's almost like like off screen that it's happening. I think they're just like tiny little figures walking in the background while she says it. But when I heard it, I was just kind of like, oh, I wish this movie would have plugged more into that as well. She just says she's going down like all of the methods. She lists off things like Scientology and astrology and whatever that they've done to try and locate who they are. And she says, I figure another 5 years of really hard work and I'll finally be a human being. And I was like, see, that's something that doesn't get played up much in these werewolf movies, because also the werewolf genre or subgenre is largely like kind of dominated by men, you know, dealing with their primal urges or instincts or anything. And I'm like, oh, dealing with a woman who's thinking like, I just want to work on myself and maybe I'll be complete. Maybe I'll actually be classified as a human being in a few years.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's something to that I wish they would have like played to a little bit more. And you know, and if there'd been a filmmaker like Mary Lambert or, you know, a woman who's gonna think more in terms of like, you know, a woman let's put it this way, have insights that a man might not, to a character, to all these characters, to Marcia and to Karen and to Donna and to Terry, just to give them all a little bit more, just a little bit more of a hook for me to just kind of like go like, yeah, there's my girl.
Yeah.
It would have been nice. But again, I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think there's work to be done. I'd like to see the sequels and see what did they do.
I mean, in my opinion, yeah, and I agree with everything you said, and I don't think that this is a bad movie. I mean, you know, I hate to give a Letterboxd rating, but I would say 3.5, because I think that the technical qualities of what is going on here, like this is a memorable film. I think it's just like everything about it, like just aesthetically, the title alone, like all these things, like I remember the key art, you know, all those things. So I think it's firing on the right cylinders. It's just not firing on all cylinders.
There you go.
So I think that it's, you know, like this is, if you're looking for more from the franchise, you're not going to find it. I recommend if you're looking for something that's just so bad that it's good. And I like Howling 5 because of just like sort of like it's the werewolf in it is not really there. Like there's very little of the actual werewolf. It's more of just and it looks shoddy. Like this is clearly a movie that was made for cheap. Like you can tell that these are sets. Right. But there's still something about the aesthetic of it that I really appreciate. I love the Agatha Christie style of it, and I love the score. But beyond that, I've not had any experience with like a Howling movie where I'm like, oh, I got to go back and watch that again.
Right. Yeah. I think I saw 4 and I don't remember anything about it. I'd probably have to watch it again.
4 is apparently, it's like almost a remake of the original, but it's like, it's more faithful to the novel. So that might answer more of like the story of like the marriage, but okay. I don't think that the movie itself, I mean, if it's the 4th one and it, you know, where it is, I mean, or watch all of them. I'd be interested if someone kind of had like a larger scope of like, what is it, you know, like how do we kind of pinpoint this franchise into one succinct idea, and what would that be?
Yeah. I do appreciate, we didn't mention John Carradine. He's in this and he plays Earl, and I just love this. Again, it's a line that's just kind of like thrown off into the periphery, even though he's more toward the foreground when he says it, but it's when they're determining what they're going to do as a pack, I guess, with Karen. He just says, you can't tame what's meant to be wild, Doc. It ain't natural. You know?
That sounds like backs off. It sounds like a Chucky line. When you can't tame what isn't natural. What is the second part?
What's meant to be wild.
You can't tame what's meant to be wild. It's not natural.
That is something totally Chucky would say. That's what we need, a crossover between Howling and Chucky. Two franchises that couldn't be more dissimilar.
I would love to see like a Dee Wallace and Chucky like coming together. Because she would just like lose her. She would freak out, you know.
Maybe that's the next leg of that franchise. Dee Wallace doing something.
Dee Wallace versus Chucky.
Yeah, something like that. In whatever capacity she wants to be at this stage in her career. Yeah. That's what I wanted to see.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, she was in... They did a fourth Jeepers Creepers, and she had like a small cameo at the beginning.
Oh,
It's
okay.
I mean, not recommended, but
That's a shame.
yeah, there you go. And she, I mean, she's still working. She does the convention route as well. So she's out there. She's doing things. But I think that covers most of that. So let's mosey on over to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
Well, who are we picking as the cherry on top?
Dee Wallace.
Karen
White.
Okay, just checking. Karen White, Carrie White.
Oh my god,
very
I didn't
close,
even.
yeah.
I didn't
Or
even.
Karen White, Karen Walker. Could you imagine Karen Walker in this movie?
Honey!
What's this? What's going on? What's that about?
First of all, she would have been right at home in that little porn store. That adult little booth and everything like that. She would have been like, oh, honey, no, not this one. This one has the good one. This one has the good movie. It's not my first time at the rodeo, okay?
I started watching the series because I've seen episodes here and there, but I just wanted to watch it all the way through. So I've got Karen Walker on my mind. I haven't yet gotten to the introduction of Leslie Jordan. So I'm eagerly anticipating that. But now I'm just like picturing just this movie with Megan Mullally as Karen Walker.
I mean, it would be a completely different movie. She'd just saunter through everything nonplussed and just
looking for alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Disapproving of everyone around her, criticizing their wardrobes, just being completely self-indulgent and self-absorbed. Because that's what we love her for.
Yeah.
I'm really happy you're going on that.
That headcanon. Yeah. Anyway, so Karen White is the cherry on top here. But now down to the serious stuff here. Last week we asked you who deserves to die the most in the substance. I nominated. I called him Man Who Assaults Monstro Elizasu. I could not for the life of me find a character name for this dude. He was like, he may as well have been an extra. I don't know. Versus Harvey. And across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, 97 for Man Who Assaults Monstro Elizasu versus 500 for Harvey.
Thanks, guys.
People really were forgiving of that man.
About who deserves to die more. They weren't going to say, like, so you get to live because you didn't do something. Although, let's hear what they have to say.
Samantha Torres. I am so excited you guys are covering this film. It is definitely one of the best of 2024. I just want to say that this podcast is one of the highlights of my week every week. Thank you guys for your time and effort. My vote goes for Harvey because no one should eat like that. The shrimp scene is so powerful, but gross.
Yes.
Thank you, Samantha.
Oh, that's sweet.
Glad to make your week a little brighter with our weird Karen Walker and Howling headcanons.
With our sparkling personalities and our dead-on impressions.
And our universe of like Haddonfield, Brooklyn.
Yeah, right. Hey, they gave it to us.
Yeah.
If Halloween Ends hadn't dropped it, we wouldn't have picked it up and ran with it. That's what I'm saying.
Thomas Baker, Harvey, he's gross and disgusting. Yeah. Samos, isn't Dennis Quaid just playing himself? NYCTM. Is that New York City too much?
Your guess is as good as mine. Or trademark?
Tomorrow.
New York City trademark?
Well, it's little TM. 91. I don't know. ONG what? What? That's all they said.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless that was like ONG. No, that's not an acronym for man who assaults Elizabeth. Michael Diamond has to be Harvey. The shrimp scene was the most disturbing part of the movie. Edit to add, I was really glad to see Eddie mention her having to crawl into the building. I've watched a lot of channels' reviews of the movie, and no one else I've seen mentioned that. It stood out to me a lot when I first saw it in theaters. The movie was such a great depiction of self-loathing, desperation, and obsession with youth. There's also heavy messaging concerning caring for your body and the lasting consequences you may face in aging as a failure to do so.
Love that.
Like, death becomes her. Now a warning?
Do you know about the original ending? We won't go into it. We might cover it.
Maybe we'll cover it. I know that there's like, even the trailer, there's all these like scenes in
that didn't go into the movie. Okay,
I do know. I knew like that Meryl likes the one that is. Goldie likes the one that never was. Yeah. Molly Lolly. The shrimp scene alone should be the reason that Harvey dies, but not to mention his misogyny just takes it over the edge. LOL. Sasha Ricky. Hate them both. Sean Prinsick.
Wait, everyone's calling them shrimps. Did I get it wrong? I thought they were crawdads. Or crayfish.
I think, did you say crawdaddy?
Crawdaddy.
Or is that the boat? It's like, crawdaddy, yeah.
But maybe I got it wrong. I don't know. All I know is they were disgusting. Like, I'm not big on seafood anyway, so they all look the same to me. But, Except
I used to really like
I like sushi and sashimi.
Well, that's different. But I used to really like shrimp until like I heard the analogy that they're like the insects of the sea.
Yeah,
and it's just like
same thing with like and lobsters and crawdads. Same thing. They're like the scavengers. They basically eat the waste, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good.
Yeah. Crawdaddy. Us, for anyone who didn't pick up on that. Sean Prinsick, that shrimp scene, so terrifying. Harvey has got to go. This might be a sore subject, but I'm hoping there's been enough distance for people. How are we feeling that Demi lost the Oscar to Ghostface?
Oh, God. From Ghost to Ghostface.
Ghost to Ghostface.
Because she was in Ghost.
We were just talking about Mikey Madison before the podcast started. Because we were saying that, you know what I want to see is like a team up of Mikey Madison and Cher.
That's what you were saying.
and you agreed.
I agreed. I said, like, I would rather see that than, because she's apparently being approached by Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise right now to be in their respective, like, whatever projects they have going. And I'm like, pick Brad. Or Cher.
I don't. Okay, just to answer that question. I mean, like, it's upsetting because I think that it was just like there was such a nice story to be told for Demi. For just like getting to that point, or Demi, in her career, and just like this being this sort of shift for her, and being celebrated. But in terms of Mikey Madison, and like, just to reiterate, I fucking hate Amber, the character in the Scream movies. I've made that no secret. I think that it's, there's worse Ghostface killers. It has nothing to do with Mikey Madison. I wasn't crazy about Honora. Like, I thought it was, it was decent, but she is the best part of that movie. Like, her performance is hysterical. Like, she is funny as fuck in that. And like, even like, it's not supposed to always be funny, but like, she just, like, just her accent, like, would kill me. And when she'd just have these, like, emphatic, like, outbursts. It's just so funny. So,
and just for the record, I adore Honora.
Yeah.
And I love Sean Baker as a filmmaker. So I thought that movie was perfect. But also, in terms of, like, I already said it, but I'll say it again in case you didn't catch it on the last pod where we discussed it. Oscars are bullshit. Who cares? The true testament to your investment is, are people still discussing that project and your investment in it years and years and years later? That's where you really learn about what your legacy is and what people really hold onto as far as like what you offered up. And I think that's kind of beautiful. I like that time dictates what's important and what what needs to be continually discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. The race is still on as far as I'm concerned. You know?
Andrew McRae. Harvey. Amethyst Frost. Forget the shrimp. I was ready for Harvey to die in his very first scene when he didn't bother washing his hands after using the bathroom.
He was disgusting from frame one.
Yeah. Blue Box. Harvey for giving us the nastiest seafood mukbang of all time. Also, shout out to the gross neighbor and Fred for not writing his number on a different piece of paper after it got all wet and nasty. What the fuck, Fred? Mukbang. I love that word, mukbang.
Mukbang.
That's a perfect word for Chucky. Mukbang. The fuck is the mukbang?
And for Cher, when she stars in that movie with Chucky, she's like, yes, you stupid idiot, mukbang. I slaved all day long in that fucking kitchen, okay? Now, I'm serious with you right now. If you don't finish your fucking mukbang, I'm leaving.
Well,
I'm out that door. I am an Oscar winner.
A mukbang, though, that's like where, like, you stuff your face on for, like, YouTube videos or whatever. Like, you just keep eating.
Is that
you
what
eat,
it is?
you eat and eat and, like, you eat more food than, like, is humanly possible. And, like, people like get off on watching that. It's like a fetish thing.
Yeah. The internet. Yeah. Makes sense. If that's what it is.
I don't know what a mukbang is. but it ain't gonna get me off the same way a good strangulation would. is what Chucky would say about that.
You are not strangling me again, okay?
I'm an Oscar winner.
Says Cher. He keeps trying to strangle Cher, and she just keeps making him more food so he can go viral.
We need to get through these.
Yes, keep going, please. I'm sorry.
It's my fault, too. Werewolf. Nah, sorry. I'm saying man who attacks a Liza Sue. Like, excuse me? I'm already yelling that I'm not a monster, and you want to attack me with a microphone or whatever the fuck that was? You deserve every STD released with the blood of my disattached arm, asshole. He's so ableist. Awesome. He's so ableist.
Hot take. But I also got to say, I love Monstro Alyssa Sue. Anyone who hurts her hurts me. Like, I adore her. That she worked so hard. All she wanted to do was make people happy.
Alex is lame. I'm killing Harvey for slurping that shrimp down in the most revolting possible way.
That really
possible.
Triggered a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, that is the grossest. Like, people are saying, like, there's gross things in the movie. None of them are as gross as that.
No, show me a titty dropping out of like an orifice where it shouldn't be, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
You show me him eating, that fucker eating his mukbang.
Yeah.
No, fuck it.
Vixie Wee Harvey. He was just disgusting from his first scene to his last, and the way he fired Elizabeth was just so cold, like she was garbage. Also, Demi deserved the Oscar for this role. I was hoping she'd finally get her flowers.
She did. Yeah. She is. And she'll get more. There's more to get.
Okie dokie. You get first dibs. Who deserves to die the most in The Howling?
You know, I will say this about the movie, is we had a lot of open criticisms throughout this discussion and some praise, but I do have to say, I didn't think about the cherry picker once while I was watching it, so it was engrossing enough. And I had enough opinions as I was progressing through it that I didn't think about that. So I'm going to say... who deserves to die the most? I don't want to... because it's not Marsha. She's just an oversexed little nymphite. But that exchange. I'm looking for my wife. Why? She put the H in that. Why? But not her. I liked Walter because that was Dick Miller's role.
I feel like Marsha was just like the Christine Taylor version of Marsha Brady.
Yeah.
I don't know what George Glass goes to rescue.
Jesus Christ. It'll just be like, oh, God. Sure, Jan. She's sitting there with Karen. Karen's just like, excuse me, this is my husband. Sure, Jan. And she just walks away. Hello, Doug Simpson. I'm going to say I can't get past... Well, you know what? He did deserve to die because it's a gray area. People might not get on board with me with this, but I'm gonna say Bill, because you know what, because everything has been left without an actual clear, explanation as to, well, was he just being eclipsed by the werewolf identity or anything like that? No, I'm just kind of like, now I'm starting to think, well, would he have cheated on her? Was is the vampire part that's taking over him like just some kind of like thing that got unlocked or whatever? I don't know. But also the fact that he slapped her and made her like leave, and that their marriage like ended in a really nasty way. Like it's not her fault, it's his. So,
but it's the werewolf. It was the werewolf. It was the werewolf taking over.
No. I don't believe.
No.
I don't believe that.
Right.
Because why wouldn't the werewolf? No. But why wouldn't the werewolf have taken over Karen as well? Why did she still have some goodness?
Because she had time. They're just like, we're gonna do this quickly.
Yeah, but
we don't know how much time passes between them escaping and
she had so much control. It made me think like, you know what, I don't buy that excuse. Then I think it's this is like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will say there is a question that's posed similarly in Midnight Mass. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No.
Have you seen it?
No.
Okay, there's a similar question that's posed like, well, and you're led to kind of wonder like, is it? And the question is answered in that movie, and so it just kind of makes me wonder about with this franchise. Like, I wonder what Joe Dante thinks. I wonder what the screenwriters think. I wonder what the novelist thinks. But I'm going to choose Bill just because, I don't know. In spite of his tiny little Tom Atkins like ass that was showing, that's all I could think about was Tom Atkins while he was taking his clothes off and just rolling around with Marcia by the fire. I was just kind of like, oh, Tom Atkins could play this. He's still got like the scruffy hair and the mustache and the thin waist and the bearing ass and everything. Those two guys should go bowling, and they both deserve to die. So I'm picking Bill. How about you? Who are you picking?
I'm gonna go with Dr. George Wagner. I mean, this guy is fucking luring people to the colony under the pretense just like, oh, you need a little rest and relaxation. I don't think you should go over here. Knowing full well like he's getting werewolves. I don't even really know what his ultimate goal was. Like, that was always kind of like
they could coexist.
Yeah,
they could coexist.
But it's just like but where's the consent? Where's the full disclosure? And it's
making an informed decision.
And he's clearly like turning people, and like this is again this gray area of like what is like where's the division between the beast and the man or woman of just like like people who are like, was Eddie Quist already a dangerous person before he became a werewolf, or was this like a thing where like he just the werewolf was the thing that made him the beast? What?
You made me remember Eddie. Like, he's a contender, and I didn't even think of him. And he's actually a really, really good one, because he's that first domino. You know me, I love to choose a first domino.
Are you going to backtrack on your...
I never have before. Am I allowed?
I mean, I don't see why not, but everyone's gonna know. They're gonna know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't mind if they know. Okay, you know what? Actually, he's a stronger choice. Actually, because I completely forgot. Because also, I loved Robert Picardo. We didn't even talk about him, but the way he performed the role, I thought was exquisite. But he is creepy AF. He's like a worst case werewolf scenario, but also just a worst case anything. Mm-hmm. Anything that he would be the worst version of. So you know what? Yeah, he's the first domino. He's the one who started the whole movie. The movie would have just been like Dee Wallace living her life if it weren't for him. So I choose Eddie Quist. I choose him.
And I stick to my guns and I push back on that, and I say that the first domino is actually Dr. Wagner, because he was probably the impetus towards Eddie Quist,
for believing in people, for believing that we can live harmoniously.
And he couldn't even keep control of this colony because, like, clearly they had their own agenda as well. And he went out like a little bitch. He's just like, yeah, kill me. Like, he wanted to die. He didn't even fight to protect him.
I thought it was actually kind of honorable to see. I liked seeing that there was some relief. It was just like, you know what? I painted myself into a corner. I fucked everything up. I deserve this. Give it to me.
I didn't see it as like he deserved it. It was more just like, oh, the nightmare is over. But it wasn't like, but I'll just leave all you other people to deal with your own mess. You know, look at all this pandemonium around me, all the lives I've destroyed. He is the villain of the piece, and I will not accept any other choice. So vote your heart, vote your conscience. And I didn't sway. I didn't change my mind. And
now we're getting political about it.
We're getting a little yeah.
I don't sway in the wind like someone else I could mention. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
So, vote your heart, vote your conscience. The poll is open on YouTube here. If you're, coming here for the first time, hit that subscribe button. If you've been watching, I'm going to just say, just in general, just hit that subscribe button. You can also vote on Instagram at the Cherry Picker Pod. Follow as well there. And if you head over to my Patreon account, you don't have to be subscribed there, but the poll is up there as well if you want to throw extra votes. But while you're there, just check it out. Maybe there's something there for you. Edward, social media.
You can mostly find me on Instagram at Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling. And then I'm back on Letterboxd. I'm trying, but I just can't get the movies under my belt as often as I would like. But I'm trying. I just posted 2 new ones as of this recording, so follow me.
Did you finish your James Bond?
Yeah, I still got to keep catching up with those. I think.
It's just like Letterboxd. Like Edward will watch a movie, and then 5 months later.
With James Bond, because I didn't want to do it when we were doing the pod ones. I don't do the ones that I watch for the pod because I don't want to spoil what I thought about it. I want to give my take on the pod so you get it fresh first. We
did that 5 years ago.
Yeah, I know, and I forgot. That's how much James Bond fucking means to me. Anyway, but that's where you can find me. You go on, Zach. What about you?
Main YouTube channel, Zach Cherry, ZACKCHERRY. Instagram is Retro Bitch Face, Twitter Zach Cherry 8, Letterboxd Zach Cherry, all those fun things. What is happening next week?
That's a good question. Is it the one where Ho? We're watching Ho. Hose of. Is it the one with the residents where there's a vast number?
I've never seen it.
Unalived people.
What is this unalive? Like what? This is like this word that's like.
It's the way, because if you say die or death or whatever, you can get demonetized. But if you say unalive,
I've never seen that. Never.
It's what happens.
I think it's a.
So anyway, is that what it is?
Yeah, we're doing it as House of 1,000 Corpses, Rob Zombie, as I put it when we were messaging each other. HO1KC.
I love that. I hope it catches on. HO1KC.
I've never seen this movie. I've never seen a Rob Zombie movie besides the Halloween, so this is going to be a real tweet. So stay tuned for that next week. Until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be right back.